We all know Homelander laughs in the face of armies and atomic bombs, but tonight he's up against a different breed of terror, the kind that doesn't just break bodies, but minds. And somewhere in that gauntlet of nightmares lies the key to his one truly pathetic vulnerability, a secret we're saving for the final body count. If you enjoy watching God complex heroes get a reality check, then you should hit the like and subscribe button. My landlord accepts payments and views, and frankly, things are getting desperate. So Homelander, flies, lasers, super strength, and an ego so large it probably has its own VOT-sponsored zip code. He can stop a plane, level a building, and make grown men weep with a single disappointed glare. You'd think he's got it all figured out, but we're not here to talk about how he handles rogue superheroes or a mildly inconvenient Tuesday. We're here to see if this sociopath can survive actual honest to badness monsters, the kind that don't care about his approval ratings. First up, Godzilla. Big, scaly, bad breath, and a tendency to redecorate cities without filing any proper permits. Homelander can fly, sure, but can he outrun a nuclear-powered temper tantrum the size of a skyscraper? Let's see if that ego is radiation-proof. Now, Godzilla isn't your average disgruntled kaiju. This fella is ancient. He was around when the Earth was still figuring out which way was up. He's less of a monster and more of a grumpy, radioactive landlord who really does it when other giant things mess with his property, which is, you know, the whole planet. His motivations are pretty straightforward. Find a threat, neutralize the threat, and then maybe take a nap in the ocean. Simple, effective. Probably doesn't even have a Twitter account, which already puts him leagues ahead of some people I could mention. Homelander's main party trick is those laser eyes. Very dramatic, great for intimidating board members or, you know, vaporizing anyone who looks at him sideways. But Godzilla breathes atomic fire. It's like comparing a laser pointer to a tactical nuke that has daddy issues. The one might give you a nasty burn. The other gives you a newly found appreciation for lead-lined bunkers and the sudden urge to move to Mars. And let's not forget Godzilla's hide. The military throws everything but the kitchen sink at him, and he mostly just looks more pissed off afterwards, like he's being pestered by a bunch of aggressive mosquitoes. Homelander's punches might feel like getting hit by a truck, but Godzilla is the truck and the highway, and probably the tectonic plate the highway is on. So this scenario, Godzilla is having one of his I am the alpha, hear me roar days in, let's say, I don't know, downtown Cleveland, because why not? Cleveland deserves it, honestly. Like, they deserve to be wiped off the map. Why do I hate Cleveland? Because it's Ohio. Homelander, probably annoyed that someone else is getting all the attention, swoops in. His first instinct, probably to try and stare Godzilla down. Bad move. Godzilla doesn't do subtle intimidation. He does atomic breath to the face. Homelander's fast, sure. He can dodge. Can he dodge everything? Godzilla's got a tail that can level city blocks, claws that can shred steel like wet paper, and the general attitude of a bouncer who's just been told that the bar is out of his favorite brew of craft beer. Homelander might try to get up close, deliver a few super punches, and Godzilla would probably just stand there, maybe blink. It's literally just a superpowered gnat trying to fight a mountain. A very angry laser-eyed gnat. The sheer scale difference is comical. Homelander's used to being the biggest, baddest thing in the room. Against Godzilla, he's just not. He can fly around and zap Godzilla with his eye beams. Godzilla, meanwhile, is probably more concerned about that itch on his back that he can't quite reach. So the outcome? Let's be generous. Homelander survives, but not because he wins. Oh no, he survives because Godzilla eventually gets bored or distracted by another shinier monster, or maybe just decides Homelander isn't worth the caloric expenditure. Homelander would likely retreat, tail between his legs if he had one, muttering something about inferior branding and unprofessional collateral damage. He'd live, but his ego? That would need a VOT-sized emergency bailout. He'd probably tell everyone he won, of course. That's just his brand. So he might survive a city-leveling kaiju bra, give or take a few dry cleaning bills. But physical fights mean nothing against our next guest, who proves the scariest monsters are the ones that read you bedtime stories. If you value your sanity, you're probably really familiar with the Babadook. No lasers needed, just crippling psychological trauma in a top hat. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar, and blissfully so, I imagine, the Babadook isn't a monster that you can punch. It's not even really a monster that you can see clearly. Most of the time, it's more an experience, a very, very bad experience. Like finding out your favorite brand of ice cream has been discontinued. But if the ice cream was also your sanity and the discontinuation was your slow, agonizing descent into madness. What do I mean? Well, the Babadook starts as a creepy children's book. You read it, you acknowledge it, and bam, instant roommate from hell. And this roommate doesn't just leave passive aggressive notes about the dishes. It actively tries to make you murder your loved ones. Charming. Thing is, it feeds on grief and denial, on all those nasty little emotions you try to sweep under the rug. And Homelander? Oh, Homelander's got a whole Persian carpet factory of unswept emotional baggage. His childhood wasn't exactly sunshine and rainbows. It was more like solitary confinement and psychological torture with the side of being chained to a hydrogen bomb. You know, standard superhero origin stuff. So picture this. The Babadook book mysteriously appears in Homelander's probably very sterile, very white Vought Tower penthouse. Maybe Stillwell left it there as a prank before, well, you know, he'd pick it up scoffing. Mr. Babadook? What is this, amateur hour? He'd read it because his narcissism demands he'd be aware of all potential threats, even literary ones. And then it begins. The whispers, the shadows in the corner of his supervision. That delightful Babadook. It's about as welcome as a surprise IRS audit I got last week. Now, Homelander's used to being in control. He's used to people cowering. The Babadook doesn't cower. It lingers, it manipulates, it would tap into every insecurity he has. And believe me, for a guy who projects that much confidence, there's a huge abyss of insecurity under there. Trust me, it takes one to know one. His need for approval? Yeah, the Babadook would whisper how everyone secretly hates him. His fear of being seen as weak, it would make him feel weak, helpless. His complicated feelings about his own origin, about Soldier Boy, about Ryan, prime Babadook mental torture right there. He can't punch grief. He can't laser eye repress trauma. He can't fly away from his own broken mind. The Babadook would be an infection in his mind. He might start seeing things, hearing his dead mother, or whatever Vought scientist played that role, criticizing him. Maybe he'd start seeing Stillwell everywhere, giving him that disappointed look. The one that really gets under that impenetrable skin. For an audience like some of you, who probably think jump scare is the peak of horror, this is that slow burn stuff. The kind that makes you uncomfortable in your own quiet house. You're welcome. Would Homelander get possessed like Amelia in the movie? It's a grim thought. Imagine Homelander, but his usual murderous tendencies are now being puppeteered by an ancient grief demon with a flair for the theatrical. Vaught's PR team would have a field day. Ultimately, can Homelander survive the Babadook? Well, the Babadook isn't really about survival in the traditional sense. It's about acknowledgement, confrontation, living with the darkness. Could Homelander do that? This is a man whose entire identity is built on a fragile facade of perfection and control. Admitting he has a problem, a real deep-seated psychological horror living rent-free in his head, yeah, that might be a mountain even he can't fly over. He'd probably just try to nuke the book and his apartment and maybe the concept of feelings themselves. Well, that was emotionally exhausting, even for a psychopath, but if that dive into the psyche was too subtle, our next guest brings the horror right back to the surface, quite literally. Next up is the splinter organism. For those of you who enjoy your horror with a side of, oh god, what the f is that doing to that person's everything? This one's for you. Think of it as a nature documentary gone horribly, horribly wrong. Like if a cactus and a porcupine had a very angry, very infectious baby. And that baby really, really wanted to get under your skin and then wear your skin and then use your skin to find more skin. It's a whole skin thing. This isn't some grand cosmic evil with a plan. The splinter organism is just hungry and efficient. It's a parasite, a mold, something that sees living things not as, you know, beings with hopes and dreams, but as convenient mobile blood buffets and spare parts. It pricks you with these little black needle-like splinters, and then the fun begins. It takes over, fast, turns corpses into puppets, and the really fun part, it can animate severed pieces. Chop off an infected arm? Congratulations, now you're fighting an arm with an attitude, and probably very grabby fingers. Now, Homelander's got that nearly impenetrable skin. Bullets bounce off. Explosions are a mild inconvenience, so you might think easy peasy. Splinter can't get him, and you'd be mostly right. Probably. Those little spiky bits would likely have a tough time getting through his epidermis. He'd probably just stand there, letting the infected bodies flail against him, looking bored, maybe file his nails. But here's the thing about parasites. they're persistent, and they're not always polite enough to use the front door, if you catch my drift. What if a splinter gets in his eye, or up his nose, or dare I say, up his Suddenly, invulnerable skin isn't quite the trump card it used to be. And this thing is fast. It doesn't wait for you to fill out a consent form. Once it's in, it's party time. For the parasite anyway, not so much for the host. And remember, this thing can take parts from different corpses and stitch them together. So Homelander might not be fighting one infected gas station attendant. He might be fighting some weird Voltron-like Power Rangers thing of victim parts. Basically, it'd be like a nightmarish flesh golem held together by spite and sharp things. His heat vision? Yeah, it's useful, sure. He could definitely make some infected barbecue. But this isn't like fighting a single entity. It's like fighting 1,000 angry infectious needles that can also reanimate your grandma if she happens to be nearby. And fire might not be enough. Remember, Dennis in the movie had to blow up an entire gas station to be sure. Homelander doesn't usually go for that level of thoroughness unless his reputation is on the line, or unless someone drank his milk. The real horror here for Homelander isn't just the physical threat. As useless as it might be to his exterior, it's the violation. The idea of something getting inside him, taking control. This is a being obsessed with his own purity, his own superiority. The thought of being puppeted by some space mold, yeah, that's a psychological attack the Babadook would be proud of. And for those of you watching at home, nervously checking your rogue houseplants, yeah, this is why we can't have nice things or nice camping trips. So does Homelander survive? Physically, yeah, probably. He's got the firepower to eventually incinerate any major splinter threat. But mentally, the sheer ick factor, the violation, the knowledge that something so primitive could even try to make him its meat puppet, that's gonna leave a mark. A tiny black pointy mark on his otherwise flawless body. He'd probably demand Vought sterilize a 10-mile radius just in case. Surviving a parasitic party crasher by just being too tough to pierce is one kind of victory, I guessed. But what if the next threat doesn't care how tough your skin is, only how loud you chew your Vought-Os? Because next on our Let's Traumatize Homelander tour, we have the charming creatures from A Quiet Place. You might know them as Death Angels, or those things that really hate it when you drop a spoon. These guys are basically the universe's most aggressive noise complaint department. They're blind as a bat that flew into a brick wall, but they can hear a pin drop from over 3 countries away. And when they hear it, they don't send a polite but strongly worded letter. They send themselves, very quickly and very pointy-ly. Now, Homelander is not what you'd call a subtle individual. His entire brand is built on being seen, being heard, being the loudest, shiniest, most goddamn American flag draped thing in the room. Hell yeah, America. Probably snores like a freight train. He definitely doesn't tiptoe. He lands with a ground-shattering thud because, you know, he's Homelander. The Death Angels, on the other hand, have made an entire planet play a permanent game of the quiet game, and the penalty for losing is, well, it's messy. So imagine Homelander just existing. He clears his throat. Whoosh! A Death Angel investigates. He scoffs at its appearance. Whoosh! Another one. Probably its angrier cousin. Tries to give a rousing speech about truth, justice, and the blah 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 whatever. This guy just keeps yapping. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Now it's a party. And Homelander is the piñata. Except the piñata is screaming and the candy is probably just more noise. This is a fundamental incompatibility. It's like trying to mix oil and water. If the oil was a narcissistic demigod and the water was a horde of sound-sensitive murder bats. His usual toolkit he's got, pretty useless here, or worse, counterproductive. Laser eyes? That's loud. Super speed flight with a sonic boom? Very loud. Punching things really hard? Surprisingly noisy, it turns out. Every single one of his go-to moves is basically ringing the dinner bell for these things. He'd be like a one-man heavy metal concert in a library full of very irritable, very fast librarians with razor claws. For those of you watching who like to yell at the screen during horror movies, don't make a sound, you stupid donut! This is your moment. You can yell at Homelander. He deserves it. Could he kill them? Sure, his heat vision could probably cook one if he got a clean shot. He's strong enough to rip one apart, but the problem isn't killing one. It's that killing one just invites its 20 closest, angriest friends. And they're fast. Unbelievably fast. He might be able to fly away eventually, but not before a very stressful, very shriek-filled game of tag. He'd have to learn an entirely new skill set. Stealth. Restraint, the art of using your inside voice. Can you even picture Homelander whispering? It feels wrong, doesn't it? Like a shark trying to knit a sweater. Now, there is that little vulnerability. the high frequency sound. If Homelander, in all of his power for accidental destruction, somehow managed to stumble upon the right pitch, maybe a particularly shrieky tantrum, he might actually find a way to fight back effectively. But let's be honest, he'd probably discover it by accident while complaining about the subpar Vought catering, and then immediately try to weaponize it and sell it as a new line of Homelander's sonic screechers. Silence your enemies and your annoying neighbors. So survival? Yes, probably. He's got the raw power to escape if things get too hairy or too quiet for his liking. But it would be an incredibly frustrating, deeply humbling experience for him to be neutered, not by superior strength, but by a simple biological imperative to shut the f up. So he might learn to shut up for 5 minutes or just get torn apart. But from the terror of silence, we now dive into the crushing, lightless dread of the abyss where sound doesn't travel quite so well. We're at the bottom of the Marianas Trench to meet the charming folks from the movie Underwater. Now, these aren't your friendly neighborhood aquarium fish. Those are. Yes, I got an aquarium. First up, down here in the trench, you've got the clingers. Think pale, grabby, mermaid-looking things that really want to give you a hug. A hug that probably ends with you being dinner. And then there's their boss, the big one. The one the director basically said was Cthulhu. Yes, that Cthulhu. The giant tentacled, drive you insane just by looking at him, god thing from your weird uncle's favorite horror stories. So Homelander, he can fly. Great, super useful when you're 7 miles under the ocean surface where the pressure is enough to turn a tank into a tin can. His super strength, it's still there probably, but try punching something that's darting around you in pitch black water when you can barely see your own hand in front of your super face. It's like trying to swat a fly in a dark closet. But the fly is a slimy, toothy nightmare, and the closet is trying to crush you. His laser eyes, well, light doesn't travel too well down there. You might be able to make some very localized, very temporary hot tubs, but vaporizing a Cthulhu-sized problem? Not likely. You'd probably just end up cooking a few clingers by accident, which might just attract more clingers because, you know, free calamari. And these things hunt in packs. They're not going to politely line up for a laser beam. They're going to be all over him like angry deep sea barnacles with a vendetta. And what about the big guy? Cthulhu or Behemoth if you're feeling less specific. This thing is huge. Like makes Godzilla look like a moderately sized iguana huge. Homelander likes to be the biggest thing around. This is a problem for his brand. You can't just stare it down. You stare at Cthulhu, you don't win a staring contest. You win a one-way ticket to Crazy Town, population U, and lots of tentacles. For those of you at home thinking, well, he could just fly out of the water. Sure, if he can find up, and if a few dozen clingers aren't using his cape as a chew toy, and if Cthulhu doesn't just, you know, reach out with a tentacle the size of a small office building and gently encourage him to stay at the bottom of the ocean forever. The environment is the real killer here. Homelander is a creature of air and relative light. Down there, he's just a very powerful, very out of place tourist who forgot his deep sea exploration Vautical, which is a submarine, but it's made by Vought. Just go with it. He can't breathe water. He's probably not built for that kind of pressure long term. Even with his powers, every second is a struggle against an environment that actively wants him to implode. It's like asking a fish to win a marathon in the Sahara. Sure, the fish might be a very strong fish, it might be a very good fish, it might be a piranha with a gold medal in biting, but it's still a fish in the desert. So survival? Yeah, he probably makes it out. He's Homelander. He'd find a way to brute force his escape, probably causing a few tsunamis in the process. But winning against an ancient cosmic horror in its own backyard? Not a chance. He'd escape gasping for air, covered in slime and existential dread, and immediately demand Vought pave over the entire ocean, or at least the Marianas Trench. Surviving cosmic calamari in a serious case of the deep sea bends is one thing, but if you think that was a bad trip, our next destination makes the bottom of the ocean look like a day spa, because we're sending Homelander to a lovely little place called House Benevito from Resident Evil Village. Waiting for him there is, well, it's a baby. A very big, very pale, very upsetting baby. Now, for those of you who haven't had the pleasure, this isn't a real baby. Not in the "Goo goo gaga need diaper change, I need poopy pants" kind of way. It's more of a "Goo goo gaga, I'm gonna swallow your soul and your sanity" kind of baby. It's a hallucination, a really effective one brought to you by trauma, weird flowers, and a lady who really likes dolls too much. So Homelander walks into this creepy house. First thing that happens, all his powers, all his fancy Vought tech, probably even his cape, if it's detachable, I'm not sure on the canon there, they're gone. Poof, he's just a dude. A very strong, very angry dude, but still just a dude. And then he meets the baby. It's enormous. It gurgles, it crawls, and it wants to give him a hug. A hug that ends with him being, shall we say, internally processed. Now, Homelander is a jerk, a big one. He thinks he's better than everyone. He's used to solving problems by either staring at them until they cry or lasering them into fine powder. Neither of those options work on a giant hallucinatory grief baby. You can't punch a metaphor. You can't laser eye your own deep-seated psychological issues, as much as he's probably tried already. The baby just keeps coming. It's slow, but it's relentless. Like that one relative at Thanksgiving who really wants to tell me about their bunions on their feet. I don't want to see your bunions, dude. Stop. This whole section of the game is designed to make you feel helpless, and Homelander hates feeling helpless. It's not in his VOT-approved emotional spectrum. He'd be running through those dark, narrow hallways, probably bumping into things. His usual swagger replaced with a sort of panicked shuffle. And the sounds, the constant gurgling, the cooing, the crying. It's enough to make anyone want to invest in some very good noise-canceling headphones. Or, you know, just curl up into a ball and cry, which, let's be honest, Homelander is probably doing on the inside, deep inside, where no one can see, especially not the VOT shareholders. So if the baby catches him, game over. Or in Homelander's case, probably a complete psychotic break that makes his usual Tuesday look like a relaxing spa day. He doesn't die in the traditional sense because it's not real, but his mind? Oh, his mind would be a scrambled egg. The horror here isn't about physical pain. It's about being trapped in a nightmare tailored to your deepest fears. And Homelander, for all his ego, is a walking collection of fears and insecurities. Fear of not being loved, fear of being weak, fear of his own monstrous nature. The baby is basically all of that rolled into one giant diaperless package of terror. So does he survive? He survives the encounter, sure. Eventually, he'd probably stumble his way through the puzzles, or Donna Benevito would just get bored of watching a grown man in a cape cry in her basement. But the experience, that's gonna stick with him. Like that one really bad song you can't get out of your head. But instead of a song, it's a giant gurgling infant that wants to eat your soul. He'd probably need years of therapy, or more likely, he'd just find someone to laser and pretend it never happened. Classic Homelander, the best way for a man to deal with his emotions. Ignore it and cause violence. If Homelander wasn't questioning his life choices before, he probably is now. But from the depths of psychological horror, we move to something simple. A cursed toy. Seems harmless, right? Because we need to talk about the monkey. Not a real monkey, mind you. That might actually be less scary. No, this is one of those old-time wind-up toys. You know, the kind that your grandma kept in a dusty box that always smelled like mothballs and regret. This one plays a little drum, or cymbals, depending on which version of your childhood nightmares we're talking about. And every time it plays its little tune, someone kicks the bucket. Not necessarily the person who wound it up. Oh no, that would be too easy. It's more like a deadly game of guess who dies next, sponsored by a very, very evil toy company. Now, Homelander is a guy who likes to be in charge. He likes to pick his targets. He likes to make a big show of it. The monkey doesn't care about Homelander's preferences. The monkey plays its little song, and then somewhere, a piano falls on someone, or a flock of angry pigeons cause a fatal unicycle accident, or someone spontaneously combusts while trying to explain the rules of cricket. It's random, it's chaotic, it's the kind of thing that would drive a control freak like Homelander absolutely nuts. He can't punch fate, he can't laser a curse. He could melt the toy monkey into a puddle of slag, and knowing its luck, the puddle would probably start humming the tune, and then his VOT tower would collapse due to a sudden, unexplainable termite infestation made entirely of sentient angry staples. This isn't a monster he can fight, it's a concept. A very, very mean concept with a wind-up key. For those of you watching who still have that one creepy doll from your childhood staring at you from a shelf, yeah, maybe put that in the attic. A very deep, very locked attic in another country. Imagine Homelander trying to explain this to VOT. So there's this monkey, and it's playing a drum, and then people just die. No, I can't see who's doing it. Yes, I tried lasering it. It just made the drum shinier. They'd probably think he'd finally snap, or that he was pitching a really, really bad children's show. Homelander and the Death Monkey's Fun Time Murder Hour. It's fun for the whole family. The real terror of Homelander here is the utter lack of control. You can't intimidate it. You can't overpower it. You can't even really understand it. It's just this thing, this stupid little monkey causing chaos and death with a cheerful tune. It's an insult to his power, an attack on his ego. He, the mighty Homelander, being undone by something you could probably win at a carnival if you were really, really bad at ring tossed, he'd probably try to get Ryan to play with it, thinking, hey, maybe it'll take out Butcher for me. Bad idea, Homelander. Very bad idea. The monkey plays no favorites. So can Homelander survive the monkey? Well, he probably won't be the one to die directly from it unless he gets really, really unlucky, but the collateral damage, The constant unpredictable deaths around him, all because of a wind-up chimp, it would be a PR nightmare, and a psychological one. He'd never trust a toy again, or music, or monkeys, or possibly even the concept of random chance. He'd probably just sit in a padded room, lasering anything that made any sort of rhythmic noise. It would be a quiet life, a very, very quiet, twitchy life. So random acts of monkey killing people are on the table, and they're not great for the brand. But what if the next threat isn't random at all, but a very personal, very pointy form of judgment? Next up, from the charming, fog-choked, needs a serious deep clean town of Silent Hill, it's Pyramid Head. Now, this guy is not here to make friends. He's not here to negotiate. He's basically a walking 7-foot-tall manifestation of guilt, punishment, and really, really bad vibes. He's got a giant metal triangle for a hat, which you know, fashion statement, and he carries around a knife that's bigger than your average VOD intern. He's the kind of guy you see and you don't ask for directions. You sort of just run in the opposite direction, preferably screaming. Now, in the movies and games, Pyramid Head is sometimes a protector, sometimes a punisher, always a problem if you're on his bad side. And Homelander doesn't have a good side. His entire existence is a highlight reel of bad decisions, cruelty, and questionable dairy consumption. Pyramid Head is basically Homelander's karmic bill collector, showing up with a very large, very sharp invoice. For those of you watching who think you're edgy because you leave your shopping cart in the middle of the parking lot, Pyramid Head sees you, he remembers, and he's coming to get you. So Homelander's usual tricks, not gonna cut it. Laser eyes, Pyramid Head probably uses those to light his cigars, if he smokes cigars, which he doesn't because he's too busy being a terrifying symbol of retribution. Super strength though, Pyramid Head is super strength. He drags that giant knife around like it's made of Vought brand styrofoam. Homelander could punch him, and Pyramid Head would probably just stand there, maybe tilt his pointy hat a bit, as if to say, is that all you got, pretty boy? The thing about Pyramid Head is, he's not just a physical threat, he's a psychological one. He represents all the bad stuff you've done. And Homelander's done a lot of bad stuff, like fill several encyclopedias with just the table of contents bad. Being confronted by a silent, unstoppable force that embodies your own awfulness, that's a special kind of terror, even for a guy who thinks he's a god. Especially for a guy who thinks he's a god, actually. Because gods aren't supposed to feel guilty, are they? Or maybe they are. I don't know. I didn't write the God rulebook. I'm not a god. He can't intimidate Pyramid Head. He can't reason with him. Can't even really hurt him in any meaningful way in the films or movies. Pyramid Head is just, he's the consequence. He's the reckoning. Homelander could try to fly away, sure, but can you really fly away from your own sins when they have a 7-foot-tall avatar with a giant knife and a really bad attitude about your life choices? It's like trying to outrun your credit score. Sooner or later, it catches up, and it usually wants to talk about the time you bought a solid gold jet ski that you didn't need. So survival, Homelander probably doesn't die at the hands of Pyramid Head in a straight up fight, because Pyramid Head isn't always about just killing the main hero. He's more about the process, the torment, the confrontation with the self. Homelander would survive, but he'd be a wreck. He'd be forced to confront, even for a moment, the sheer unadulterated awfulness of his own existence. And that, for Homelander, is a fate worse than death. Facing your sins incarnate is rough, no doubt, but what if the next threat isn't dark and rusty, but fluffy and kind of adorable, and also wants to destroy the world as a giant smiling dessert? That's right, we're talking about the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters. Yes, that one. Giant, sailor-suited, surprisingly cheerful harbinger of doom. Now, this isn't just a big marshmallow. This is Gozer, the Gozerian's chosen form of the Destructor. Some ancient god asked the Ghostbusters to pick a form, and Ray, bless his innocent marshmallow-loving heart, thought of the most harmless thing he could. And thus, a 100-foot-tall snack cake of terror was born. It's a lesson, really. Never let your nerdiest friend pick the apocalypse. So Homelander sees this, a giant smiling marshmallow man waddling down 5th Avenue. His first reaction, probably confusion, then disgust. And maybe a little bit of, is this a joke? Am I being punked by Vought again? He's used to fighting things that look, you know, threatening. This looks like something that should be on a cereal box, not something that's about to step all over a city. For those of you watching who still have a sweet tooth, try not to get too hungry. This guy's a bit past his expiration date, and also, you know, evil. Homelander would probably try to use his usual intimidation tactics. Fly up, glare, maybe give a little speech about how he's the only giant city-threatening entity allowed around here. Stay Puft would just smile. That big, dumb, happy smile. It's unnerving. Then Homelander would get annoyed and use his laser eyes, and yeah, he'd definitely roast some marshmallows. The whole city would probably smell like a giant s'more, but Stay Puft is big, really big, and he's made of, well, marshmallow. He's not exactly solid. Lasering him is like trying to laser a cloud. And Homelander's super strength? What's he going to punch? A giant fluffy tummy? It'd be like punching a giant pillow. Pillow is also on fire and trying to crush you at this point. You could also try to lift him, maybe fly him into space, but Stay Puft is, despite being mostly air and sugar, heavy and probably very difficult to get a good grip on. It'd be like trying to wrestle a giant angry Jello mold. A Jello mold with a sailor hat and a bad attitude. The real problem for Homelander here isn't that Stay Puft is too strong. It's that he's too absurd. Too weird. Homelander fights bad guys. He fights other soups. He doesn't fight giant sentient desserts. It's off-brand. It's undignified. He can't even get good PR photos out of this. Homelander saves City from deliciously evil Marshmallow Man. That just doesn't have the same ring to it. He'd probably be more worried about getting marshmallow goo on his cape than he is about the actual destruction. So how does this end? Well, in the movie, the Ghostbusters cross the streams and blow up the portal, which takes care of Gozer and by extension, Mr. Stay Puft. Homelander doesn't have a proton back. He doesn't do teamwork unless it involves him telling other people what to do. So he'd probably just keep blasting away, getting increasingly sticky and frustrated until either Stay Puft just sort of melts from all the heat or the Ghostbusters show up to do their thing, probably while Homelander tries to take all the credit. He'd survive, sure, but he'd be finding marshmallow in weird places for weeks. Well, that was a sticky mess and probably gave him a weird craving for s'mores. But battling a giant sugar baby is one thing. Our final horror is far more insidious. A patient, generational evil that doesn't need to throw a punch to tear your entire world and your mind apart. Finally, we arrive at King Paimon from the feel-good family film of the year, the one that I brought all my children to, Hereditary. Now, Paimon isn't your typical jump scare monster. He doesn't have big claws or laser eyes. He's a demon, a king of hell apparently, and he's got a plan. Very long, very patient, very messed up plan that involves finding a new human body to live in, preferably a male one. And he's got a whole cult of very dedicated, very creepy old people helping him out. So how does Homelander fit into this? Well, Paimon needs a male host. Homelander is, last I checked, a male, and he's got a pretty impressive vessel, all superpowered and whatnot. The cultists would probably see him and think, jackpot, Paimon's getting an upgrade. They'd be drawing sigils on his Vought Tower penthouse before he even finished his morning glass of milk. Problem for Homelander is, Paimon doesn't fight fair. He doesn't show up for a fist fight. He works through people. He messes with your head. He turns your family against you, or in this case, he'd probably try to turn Homelander's family, the Seven, Vought, maybe even Ryan, into unwitting pawns. He'd exploit every crack in Homelander's already fractured psyche. His mommy issues? Paimon would have a field day. His desperate need for love and worship, or Paimon could probably offer him a pretty sweet deal on that front too. Homelander is a jerk, a really big one who thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. But Paimon and his cult have been playing the long game for generations. They're masters of manipulation. They'd make Homelander feel like he was losing his mind, which to be fair is a pretty short trip for him on a good day. He can't punch a demonic influence. He can't laser a generational curse. He'd be fighting shadows, whispers, and his own rapidly deteriorating sanity. For those of you watching who sometimes think your house is haunted because the floorboards creak, imagine that, but the creaking is actually a demon king trying to wear your skin like a fancy new suit. Sweet dreams. So could Paimon actually possess Homelander? That's the million-dollar soul-selling question. A being of immense demonic power in the body of the world's most powerful, most unstable soup. That's not just a horror movie. That's an apocalypse speedrun. So, survival? This one's tricky. Homelander might survive in the sense that his body is still walking around, but would it still be him? Or would he just be a meat puppet for a king of hell who likes floral crowns in a really disturbing family reunion? Paimon doesn't usually leave his chosen hosts with a lot of free will, or you know, the original soul. This isn't a fight Homelander can win with brute force. This is a battle for his very essence, and frankly, given his track record, his essence might not be worth all that much to begin with, but Paimon's not picky when it comes to prime real estate. He's faced gods, monsters, and his own reflection in the morning, which is arguably the scariest of them all. But after all that, what's the one truly pathetic weakness these horrors have exposed in our invincible hero? It's not his need for love, though that's a close second and frankly, a bit sad. It's not his daddy issues, though those could fill a Vought-sponsored stadium. No, Homelander's most pathetic weakness, the one thing that truly unravels him when faced with these kind of horrors, is this. He genuinely cannot comprehend, nor can he emotionally process anything that doesn't revolve around him. These monsters, they don't care about his powers, his image, his approval ratings. They operate on their own terms. Their own ancient rules, their own psychological landscapes. Godzilla isn't trying to beat Homelander, he's just being Godzilla. The Babadook isn't impressed by his flight, it's busy feasting on grief. And Paimon doesn't want to fight him, it wants to be him, or someone like him, for his own demonic purposes. Homelander is, for perhaps the first time in his life, utterly irrelevant to the core motivations of his enemy. And for a narcissist, being irrelevant is a fate worse than any laser beam. It's pathetic, isn't it? So what do you think? Do you think Homelander could survive or couldn't survive against any of these monsters? I want you to tell me down in the comments and let me know which character you want me to put in this video next. It could be anybody, just make sure they're strong. We don't want to deal with weaklings here. And if you want another video just like this one, you should like this video and subscribe because I post 3 videos like this a week, and you should watch this one on screen now.